2,000 people they tried
right.
out.
But Jafar wasn't imitating Michael, he became Michael.
For the first time, we saw a piece of it, and tears came down our eyes. We all started crying. That's how good he was.
They say blood is thicker than water, but for the Jackson family, that bond has always come with a pressure few people truly understand.
I couldn't believe it. I got so emotional because he became Michael on that screen. It brought tears to my eyes. I couldn't believe it. He's incredible.
When Jackie Jackson walked onto the set of the Michael biopic and saw what his nephew, Jaafar Jackson, had become, something inside him broke. What exactly did he see on that set? And what is it about Jafar that could shake a man who has seen it all? Jafar just crossed a line no one expected, and Jackie's reaction is just the beginning. At that moment, Jackie Jackson couldn't hold back. Long before Michael Jackson became the biggest star on the planet, Jackie Jackson was right there beside him. As a member of the Jackson 5, he played a crucial role in building the band from its humble beginnings. While the spotlight moved from one person to another, Jackie remained the same. As the eldest of the Jacksons, he carried himself with a calm aura, even when things behind the scenes were far more complicated than they appeared. For years, the media has scrutinized the Jackson family, dissecting their every move until it became a global obsession. They aren't just a legendary musical dynasty. They are a household name the world hasn't stopped talking about for decades. From the early days in Gary, Indiana, to the gates of Neverland, their lives have been talked about, judged, and picked apart, again and again. At some point, it stopped being just fame and started to feel like pressure that no normal person could handle. But despite all the attention, Jackie always seemed grounded. Now, for the Jacksons, staying composed has become a way to survive. When your life is always on display, every reaction matters. Every smile, every transformation, and every moment gets judged. So, over time, Jackie learned to keep his emotions in check. He became the steady one in the family, the person who could hold things together in public no matter what was happening in private. But everything changed during a private moment involving his nephew, Jaafar Jackson. When you think of the Jackson family, certain names instantly stand out. For many, Jafar isn't the first that comes to mind. As the son of Jermaine Jackson, he has spent most of his life quietly in the background. In fact, to most people, he's just Jermaine's son, connected to the legacy but never positioned at its center. However, during a recent production tied to the Jackson family's legacy, something changed in a way nobody expected. Jackie saw a version of Jafar that felt completely unfamiliar to him. For the first time in a long time, the man known for staying composed finally reached his limit. When he saw the shocking change Jafar had gone through, Jackie was not just stunned, he broke down in tears. In this moment, it felt like he was no longer looking at the nephew he had known for years. It felt like he was looking at someone completely different. But how does a young man who spent his life avoiding the spotlight suddenly undergo a change so shocking that it shatters the composure of his own flesh and blood? To understand why a man like Jackie couldn't hold back his shock, we have to understand the boy behind the mask and how exactly this transformation began. The boy in the shadow. Before we even talk about Jafar, we have to talk about the man who raised him, Jermaine Jackson. Now, if you know anything about the Jackson 5 band history, you know Jermaine wasn't just Michael's brother. He was the original lead singer of the Jackson 5, the big heartthrob of the group, and a man who lived through every single high and low of the family's crazy rise to fame. Jermaine didn't just see the spotlight. He felt the heat of it. He saw the world worship his family, but at the same time, he had a front-row seat to how that same fame could slowly tear a person apart. He saw the isolation, the lack of privacy, and the way the world treats a Jackson as a product, rather than a human being. This is exactly why he didn't take any chances with his son, Jafar. He made a very clear choice to raise him completely outside the spotlight. Born in 1996, Jafar was almost invisible to the public for the first 20 years of his life. While other celebrity kids were out chasing attention or posting every second of their lives online, Jafar was growing up in a world of silent normalcy. He was shielded by a father who knew exactly what happened when you let the industry in too early. While the media was hunting for stories about the next generation of Jacksons, Jafar was simply being a kid, far away from the cameras and the crushing pressure of the family name. Jafar spent most of his time at the Havenhurst estate in California. And you have to understand, this place was more than just a house. It was more like a sanctuary. We are talking about a museum of the family's entire history, tucked away behind high gates and sprawling lawns. Inside those walls, gold records reportedly lined the hallways, and famous stage outfits sat in glass cases like ancient armor. Memories lived in every corner of this house. But despite living in the middle of a legend, Jermaine was careful. He knew the Jackson name could open every door in the world, but he also knew it could be a heavy weight to carry, one that might crush a young man before he even found his own voice. He wanted to give Jafar something rare in the family, a normal childhood where he wasn't being judged by the world before he even knew who he was. Because of this, Jafar's life took a totally different path than many expected. For years, Jaafar Jackson wasn't even interested in being a star. He wasn't the kid at family talent shows trying to grab the microphone. Instead, he liked playing golf and living a private life. He was more interested in the precision of a swing and the silence of a golf course than the roar of a stadium. At family events, he reportedly was the shy one standing in the back while everything else was happening. Yes, he was part of a legendary family by blood, but he was never the one standing at the center of the frame. But things didn't stay that way forever. While no one was really paying attention, Jafar was going through a transformation that would later stun the world. You see, when you grow up surrounded by a family like the Jacksons, it's almost impossible not to feel a shift at some point. Behind closed doors, away from the cameras and constant attention, Jafar started practicing music and learning how to dance. It wasn't because he was trying to be famous or become the next big pop star like Michael Jackson. He was simply doing it for fun. Or so he thought. He never realized he was preparing himself for one of the most defining roles of his life. He studied the legends whose records filled his home, learning the rhythm and discipline that came with being a Jackson, but doing it quietly and without pressure. Meanwhile, as Jafar was changing in private, something big was beginning to take shape in Hollywood. For years, there had been talk about making a movie based on the life of Michael Jackson. This wasn't going to be just another biopic. It was a major project meant to tell the full story, from a young boy in Indiana to the complicated figure known as the King of Pop. The pressure was huge. Every major actor wanted the role because everyone understood that this was not just another role. This was the role of a lifetime. But then, a rumor started to spread, and it caught the industry off guard. People began to speculate that the producers were no longer focused on big names. Instead, they were looking much closer to home. They were looking at the bloodline. And that's when the news finally broke. Jaafar Jackson had been cast to play his own uncle. Now, the reaction on social media was mixed. while some believe he could embody the role because he should know his uncle better. Others questioned how someone who had lived such a private life could suddenly step into the shoes of the most famous performer in history. Some wondered if this was a wise decision by the family or a risk that could damage the legacy of the King of Pop. But while the world was still debating, the producers were already seeing something different. They saw that the silent boy who once stood at the edge of family photos was finally ready to step forward. They didn't know he had been preparing for this moment in his own way for years. The world remained skeptical, and the pressure was intense. But when Jafar Jackson finally stepped onto the set, everything changed. The role that changed everything. Now, the news about the new Michael Jackson movie did not just break the internet. It sent shockwaves around the world. For almost 20 years, fans have wondered if anyone could ever truly capture what made Michael so special. The truth is, people did not just want a movie that played his famous songs. They wanted to see the real person. They wanted to see his struggles and the major moments behind the scenes. But with Jafar Jackson playing the role, the world was split right down the middle. Honestly, this was not a normal choice. It was a huge risk that could either save the family name or hurt it forever. On social media, the debate was intense. Some fans were outright against the casting, arguing that a family member couldn't possibly be objective. They worried it would be a sanitized version of history, or worse, that Jafar was only there because of his last name. Critics argued that the role required a seasoned, award-winning actor, not a nephew who had never held a major acting role in his life. Even within the family, the decision wasn't easy. You have to remember the man who raised Jafar, Jermaine Jackson. Jermaine had spent his son's entire life keeping him away from this exact kind of pressure. For years, Jermaine's biggest goal was to protect Jafar from the industry that had been so hard on the Jackson family. Letting his son step out from the shadows and into the most scrutinized role in cinematic history was not exactly easy for him. It wasn't just about fame. It was about Jermaine handing his son over to a world that isn't always kind to Jacksons. But Jafar didn't let this stop him. He knew he couldn't just rely on his DNA. He knew that to the world, he was an outsider. To prove he belonged, he went through an unsettling transformation. There are even reports that before he auditioned for the role, he went into some kind of Michael boot camp for 2 years. He didn't just practice the moves, he pushed his body to the absolute limit. Reports from the set said he practiced the choreography until his feet were literally bleeding and numb. He worked with Michael's original choreographers, dissecting every head tilt, every finger snap, and the specific haunting rhythm of Michael's voice. It was almost like he wasn't just acting, he was trying to summon a spirit. The biopic is being made by director Antoine Fuqua, who is famous for making movies that connect deeply with viewers. Fuqua himself admitted he was worried at first. He wondered if a kid with no acting background could deliver a big-budget biopic. But then, the moment Jafar hit the first few moves, he knew he had made the right decision. In that moment, Fuqua knew he hadn't just found an actor. He had found the only person who could bridge the gap between the legend and the man. The movie is set to air in April 2026, and fans can't just keep calm. People are not just talking about the performances, they are arguing about the truth. Some wonder if being a Jackson makes Jafar too close to the story. But others believe that's exactly why he's perfect. Meanwhile, the team has been working day and night to ensure every detail is perfect. We are talking about a level of attention most movie sets never see. They are rebuilding famous stages and looking into Michael's most private times. From the thread on the clothes to the way his shoes hit the floor, everything is being done with immense care. They want to take the audience back in time. They want you to feel like you are there in the early days of the Jackson 5, and then right in the middle of the famous Thriller years. But here is the thing. Acting as Michael Jackson is a challenge that most actors would fear. Michael was far more than just a singer. He was a person who changed the world. His life was full of complex emotions, joy, and very deep pain. To embody those emotions on screen, you need more than just a resemblance. You need someone who truly understands the weight of that legacy. This is why casting Jafar became the ultimate gamble. Because he is family, he has a deep connection to the story that no Hollywood star could ever fake. While critics are still skeptical, the clips and teasers we've seen from this upcoming project are slowly silencing the noise. Jackie Jackson thought he was just there to help with the movie. He thought he was there to protect the family name. However, he had no idea that he was about to see a ghost of the past. The breaking point for Jackie. For Jackie Jackson, this movie is not just a commercial project. For him, being on the set is like watching his own life happen all over again. It brings back the laughter and the music, but also a lot of hidden pain. The movie uncovers many things, and it's not just about Michael Jackson alone. It is about a whole family and the impact they had on the world. It is about the hardships they endured and the bond they share that even death could not break. In a recent interview with Entertainment Tonight, right outside the premiere of the movie Michael, Jackie Jackson couldn't hold back his emotions. This moment stayed with viewers who have been following the production of this movie. They were there to celebrate the big night. But what started as a quick conversation about the film's release turned into something much more raw. It was a rare look at how this project is actually affecting the people who lived the real story. In fact, seeing the oldest brother lose his cool like that was something most fans never thought they would see. Jackie started talking about seeing Jafar performing as Michael. In his words, Jafar wasn't just acting. He became Michael. This was nothing like the Michael impersonators we've seen in the past. From his voice, hair, to his laughter, it was as if Michael was in the room with them. You could see the steady, controlled man who had survived decades of fame start to lose his grip. Tears filled his eyes, and his voice began to shake right there on camera. For a second, it felt like all the years of keeping things together just came crashing down on him. It wasn't just that he was seeing his nephew in a fancy costume or wearing the right makeup. It was that he was seeing a glimpse of a brother he had loved and protected for his entire life. It was like a door to the past had been kicked wide open while the whole world was watching. Jackie began to speak about Michael, but not as the king of pop. He talked about him as a person. He remembered Michael's kindness, how much he loved to give to others, and just how human he really was. He talked about the sound of Michael's laughter and how his heart was always in the right place. For Jackie, Michael wasn't a poster on a wall or a name in a headline. He was his little brother, the kid he grew up with in Indiana, sharing dreams in a house that was way too small for their big ambitions. Seeing Jafar recreate those moments brought back memories that were both beautiful and very painful at the same time. Of course, the tears Jackie shed were not just about sadness. A big part of it was pride. He felt an incredible amount of pride in Jafar for being brave enough to take on such a massive role. Think about the guts it takes to try to play your uncle when your uncle is the most famous man to ever walk the earth. He was proud of his family for keeping their story alive after all these years of being attacked by the press. It didn't stop there. he was also proud of Michael for creating music that still matters and connects to people so many years later. But beneath all this pride, there was a deep, silent hurt. It was the hurt of missing someone who is no longer there. It was the realization that while the movie can bring the image of Michael back to life, the real man is still gone. Somehow, you could see that the movie healed the Jackson family, especially for Jackie Jackson, who had kept his emotions bottled up for decades through all the court cases and the private pain of losing his siblings. Seeing Jafar perform was the key that finally unlocked all the pressure. It showed just how powerful a performance can be when it comes from a place of love. It can heal old wounds, and it can bring people together across different generations. The story was no longer just about a movie production. It was about a family finding a way to say goodbye and hello at the same time. Jackie's reaction proved that Jafar had done something much bigger than just acting. He had touched the heart of his family, and in doing so, he was ready to touch the heart of the world. But to really understand why Jackie Jackson's reaction hit so hard, we have to go back to the darkest day this family ever lived through. Because after that moment, nothing in their world ever stayed the same again. The day the light went out. For hardcore MJ fans, the 25th of June 2009 is probably the saddest day of their lives. It was one of those rare moments where time seemed to slow down. 1 minute, the world was preparing with Michael Jackson for what many believed would be the biggest comeback in history with the This Is It tour, and the next, the headlines were saying the opposite. The king of pop has passed away. Fans couldn't bring themselves to believe it. But while the world was trying to make sense of the news, his family was going through a pain no one could really understand. For them, this wasn't breaking news. It was a phone call that changed everything. They didn't lose a global icon. They lost their brother. It was really a trying time for the family. Everywhere you turned, Michael's face was there. His music was playing. In fact, it felt like the entire world was mourning at once. But behind the scenes, Jackie had to step up. He had to help hold his family together while dealing with his own loss. He helped organize a global memorial and made sure Michael's children were protected from the constant attention. The pressure was intense, but as the oldest brother, he handled it. You see, long before the world knew the name Michael Jackson, there was the Jackson 5. We are talking about 5 brothers who didn't just sing songs. They actually broke down walls and changed the entire blueprint of what a pop star is supposed to be. Jackie was right there for every second of it. He saw the whole journey from the very first day. He watched Michael grow from a little kid into a total perfectionist. In fact, Michael would spend hours and hours obsessing over one single sound or one tiny dance move. He wouldn't stop until every detail was perfect. This level of consistency is really what sets him apart from everyone else on the planet. But you have to understand that this kind of legendary fame always comes with a type of pressure that never goes away. Before long, the attention around Michael didn't just grow, it became suffocating. For years, Michael Jackson was always in the news for one thing or another. Before long, the headlines became more aggressive, and the questions got much more personal. It reached a point where the world started treating him like a mystery, almost like a character in a gossip magazine instead of a real person. People wanted to pick him apart and analyze every move he made. It was overwhelming, not just for Michael, but for his entire family. These were the things he had to live through long before he passed away. And this is exactly why the excitement around this new movie feels different. Of course, people want to see the nostalgic performances and the moonwalk on a big screen. But more than that, there is a need to understand the man behind the music. After so many years of speculation and conspiracy theories, people are looking for something that feels closer to the truth. And this biopic is starting to feel like the answer. For his family, this is a moment they have been waiting for. They are finally ready to open up and own the narrative. Not the controversies that surrounded him for years, but the real experiences he lived through. They want people to see Michael Jackson as a human being, not a legend. And that is why the energy around this project feels so strong. It is not just about looking back. It is about finally making sense of a life that changed the world, but was never fully understood by it. The lasting legacy. Today, when you look back at the journey toward this movie, it becomes clear that Jackie's reaction on that red carpet was about so much more than a movie. It was the release of a weight that had been building up for nearly 2 decades. The real story here isn't just about a role, it is about a clear power shift. For decades, the narrative around the Jackson family has been shaped by people outside the family. From anonymous sources to controversial documentaries, the world spent years breaking down Michael Jackson's life through rumors and theories. But with this project, something is changing. For the first time on this level, the family is stepping in to take control of how the story is told. Now, behind the scenes, there has been a lot of talk about how involved the Michael Jackson estate really is. It is not just about giving approval and stepping back. The word going around is that they are deeply involved in the process, even stepping in to support extra filming to make sure everything feels right. Of course, not everything has been confirmed, but you can tell this is not being handled like a regular Hollywood project. This feels more personal and intentional. Meanwhile, the media are very excited about this biopic. The anticipation for April 2026 keeps building, with fans on platforms like X and TikTok watching every small update. Every photo, every short clip, every detail from this production gets picked apart. Fans are excited they can now see the struggles, loneliness, and discipline that makes the legend. But what is interesting is how the conversation is starting to change. It is no longer just about the old controversies. In fact, people are beginning to talk about the artistry again. They are revisiting the discipline, the early days of the Jackson 5, and the level of focus it took to build something that lasted this long. For Jackie Jackson, this moment means everything to him. He has spent years quietly protecting the family's legacy while watching the internet turn rumors into facts. He has seen how quickly stories can take on a life of their own. But now, through this movie and other projects, he finally has the chance to help tell the version of his brother that he actually knew. This is not just about making a successful movie. It is about setting things straight, in a way that feels honest. In many ways, this project feels like a full-circle moment for the entire family. It brings the fans' attention back to what started everything in the first place: the music, the discipline, and the bond between brothers. By keeping the process close and involving people who were part of those original moments, they are choosing a different path. They are not relying on outside voices to interpret their history. They are telling it themselves, in a way that connects with a new generation that is open to listening without the same assumptions. As the release gets closer, one thing is becoming clear: the interest is not slowing down. If anything, it is growing stronger. People are ready to see this story from a perspective they have not fully experienced before. The conversations are changing, and the focus is slowly moving toward understanding instead of speculation. Now, the controversies may never fully disappear, and the internet will always have its opinions. But for the first time in a long time, the Jacksons are not reacting to the narrative. They are shaping it. And based on the attention this project is already receiving, it feels like this could define how the story is remembered for years to come. The story of the Jacksons is far from over, but this moment feels like the most important one yet. But as Jafar Jackson steps out into the light, one big question is still hanging in the air. When the world feels like it has Michael back for a moment, what happens to the boy who had to disappear to make it possible? The King of Pop is returning to the big screen, but this time, the story is being told by the people closest to him. But will this finally bring clarity, or will history keep rewriting itself? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. For more content like this, tap on the next video on your screen.